Hi there, I'm Andreas Marazes, Researcher and Project Manager at the European Neighbourhood Council, and this is the ENC In-Depth podcast. Today's in-depth discussion is the fourth of a series of podcasts which are part of the Beyond Erasmus education, exchanges and employment opportunities for youth in the EU and Turkey. The project is supported by Friedrich Naumann Foundation in Turkey and aims at promoting student mobility beyond the Erasmus Plus framework, youth exchanges, internships, training courses, networking, access to funding, and many more. Today's podcast is dedicated to the all-time classic question, if I may call it like that, of after university, what now? Basically, what are the employment opportunities? What kind of academic career may I follow? Or whether I should work in the civil society sector, what kind of internship, etc. We'll have the chance today to hear stories from successful professional figures working in civil society and media. And basically the objective is to share experience and stories about what it's like to particularly work in different professions, both in the EU and Turkey. Of course, I'm super lucky today to have virtually at least with me two excellent young professionals who also participated as trainers in our program. In Turkey, we have Kocak, who is currently working as a communication officer at the Truth, Justice, Memory Center. She also previously worked as an editor at the Media and Law Studies Association in Turkey, and I had the pleasure to cooperate with her under one of our training programs a couple of years ago. Good morning, Ece.
Good morning, Andreas. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for joining us. Live from Warsaw at the moment, Jack Parrock, who is a TV and radio correspondent based in Brussels, usually, with experiences on broadcasting and live events. He is, as I said, the Brussels correspondent for Euronews, Deutsche Welle, and TRT, or Turkey Today, if I have my facts right, Jack. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Andreas. So yeah, I'm a freelancer, work for all the different channels indeed. Yeah. So currently just in Warsaw off the back of a reporting trip for Deutsche Welle News. Yeah, great to be with you.
Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule, both of you, to join in today's podcast discussion. So I would like to start our discussion with you, Ece, and I will extend the same question to you, Jack, afterwards. So, Ece, I would like you to give us, your insights, your thoughts on how it is to work in a civil society organization in Turkey, based on your personal experience, of course.
Okay, of course. Thank you, Andreas. Nowadays, especially in a country like Turkey, where the civil space is shrinking due to an increasingly authoritarian regime, working in civil society has become increasingly difficult. However, it also makes it, I think, equally rewarding at times. In my experience, working in civil society has several aspects. The most important is, of course, community building and advocacy, and sometimes in our case, international advocacy as well, because especially since the failed coup attempt in 2016, there has been a lack of data collected by the state. The state, especially in regards to grave human rights violations. So the civil society now has even a bigger role in reporting, data collecting, and presenting these data to international bodies in order to monitor what's going on in Turkey. But besides that, I also come from journalism, similar to Jack, but of course in a smaller capacity. But what I think they speak to each other in some sense, because it's about being with people and telling people stories to some extent. Previously, in my work with MLSA, I was mostly working with journalists in order to promote their rights and provide support to journalists who are on trial in Turkey. And now I'm working more towards collective memory, trauma, and reconciliation in Turkey, and peace building, especially in the Kurdish region. But it's not always a very rewarding job. Of course, the cons would be, I think, the emotional distress sometimes that we face, mostly because, especially in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of colleagues or partners who have been detained or who have remained in prison for a very, very long time. And that kind of legal pressure, of course, demotivates civil society workers in Turkey, especially the last couple of years. There have been trials like the Büyükada trial, where 11 human rights advocates were on trial, and then the Gezi trial, where Osman Kavala is still imprisoned. But besides that, I think it's important to talk about how work in civil society in Turkey. I think this is a global problem, but in Turkey as well, there's a divide between more voluntary-based and more grassroots organizations versus more institutional, sort of, so to speak, company-like organizations. Of course, what's valuable is to have the grassroots and to have a very large volunteer base. However, at times, if you're in a bigger organization, working in civil society may also end up, how should I put it, with a lot of mobbing as well, because sometimes, but this shouldn't also come from the employer. I think people who work in civil society have a very difficult time, especially in countries like Turkey, to put a divide between their personal life and professional life, because the work is so overwhelming, and so it washes over everything in your life. And sometimes you overwork yourself, or you don't have any strict working hours, and people have normalized this, I think, to an extent. And sometimes it is unnecessary, or sometimes you don't feel that much burnout because of this, but emotionally it's draining. But for me, I really enjoy civil society work, because in my case, how should I put it? I practice advocacy in an area where also corresponds with my research interests as well. That's why I think one suggestion to future civil society workers who might be listening to this, I could say that pick an area where you can, an area that can feed your research, or feed your at least academic curiosities, so to speak. But besides that, being with people and seeing that sometimes the advocacy that you are campaigning for or producing, when that really does have an impact, when you see that clear impact, that's very rewarding. But anyway, I should stop now, I think.
No. I mean, I would like to stay a little bit longer with you, because I wanted to ask, you share your feelings and your thoughts, and you at some point you touched upon something practical. So for someone who's coming out of university, it's yeah, I want to work in the civil society sector. What does that actually entail? I mean, you said something about long hours. What else one should expect when he or she works in the civil society sector? Practically speaking, does it mean doing databasing? Does it mean doing secretariat kind of support? What is it like in a nutshell to work in a civil society organization?
Sure. Long hours, of course, is a thing, but besides that, working in civil society, it depends on what kind of area you're working on, of course, but mostly it entails a lot of field study as well. So a lot of traveling within the country, in order to meet with beneficiaries, meet with people. People who you are advocating for, in order to meet with them, in order to collect data. But besides that, it's surprising, but a lot of bureaucracy as well. A lot of meetings with donors, a lot of meetings with other organizations within Turkey who work in the same area as you are, in order to build partnerships, or in order to increase collaboration among organizations. And sometimes, yes, data analysis, but also especially with the pandemic now, I think most of what we do is digital, even meetings and all. And this might actually be something that will stay like this even after the post-pandemic life. But drafting reports is always a big part of civil society in Turkey, and designing and implementing digital campaigns. In some cases, again, presenting data to European organizations, presenting data to UN, to Council of Europe. What else? And also most of civil society now, because it entails a lot of training programs. For example, now at Hafıza Merkezi Truth Justice Memory Center, we are running a project called Memory and Youth, where 11 to 12 young, like seniors in college or fresh out of college students, who are interested in studying memorialization. This has been going on since the beginning of the year now, and there's a series of workshops with relevant academics, and there are field trips, and they are expected to run their own projects. For example, even the logistics of all of that, organizing those workshops, booking the academics, or during the field trips, booking the flights, the hotels and everything, that kind of.
I know the feeling, exactly. Like organizing events. I can also add like in the administrative part of the work, like reporting back to donors, etc. And also don't forget the handling of social media. And
exactly.
I guess Jack would agree with us, social media is quite important, especially for the visibility, whether you're an individual, like a journalist, or you're a civil society organization. Thanks a lot, Ece. That was excellent. Let me move from Turkey to Warsaw and to you, Jack, and extend the same question to you. Now, working as a journalist for many seems like a fascinating trip, full of ups and downs, a kind of roller coaster, and a lot of exposure as well for those who love these things. Now, can you please tell us what it means actually to be a journalist? I want the whole picture, like the privilege of reporting the news, the responsibility that comes with it, the fun part, the risks, everything.
Wow, yeah, big question, hey? But yeah, no, I think it's an important one. So my backstory is that I sort of fell into journalism a little bit. To be perfectly honest with you, I just wanted to work in TV, and I didn't really know too much about journalism, but I studied a course in broadcast journalism and then got sidelined and then just loved it. The first story I ever had go out on radio, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I didn't really know too much, but I do believe like journalism is a vocation. I don't think, similar to what Esha was saying about like how it is in every part of your life, you can't just do like your work in your job. You also have to be that in all of your life. Everybody, when you have dinner, people want to hear about the stories you're telling. When you're having a drink with a friend, like your job affects everybody. So like, if somebody works in a bank, for instance, it's hard for us to understand, but the point in being a journalist is that everything that you're doing should be relevant to everyone generally and have some point. So it means that you're kind of always on in a sense as well. But I don't mind that. I've managed over the years to sort of block out how I deal with that and how I put that out. Anyway, as far as like doing journalism, right? So I started mainly been doing TV for the last sort of 8 years, but also a lot of radio. And then the last year I've done a lot of writing as well for British newspapers and what have you. So like I said, I sort of stumbled into it. The idea of what it is to be a journalist for me is just honestly to try, and the way I see it honestly is to be a filter. I see myself in a weird way as a sort of filter between whatever's going on and whatever people need to know about what's going on. And that's a responsibility as well, to try and make sure you get the right information out. As you say, it's extremely exciting at times. You know, I've been in the US for the elections in November. I've traveled the world. I've been in India, Venezuela, Russia, whatever, like tons of places. It's been very, very cool. I've been extremely lucky that a lot of channels have put faith in me to do that. But there is also some kind of emotional toll as well. I've just come off the back of filing on the Polish border story, where Belarus is like sort of instrumentalizing and weaponizing Iraqis and Middle Eastern people, and they are sat freezing in the middle of a vast forest and not able to access. We met a woman who'd lost her baby in that forest, for instance. It's been pretty, sorry to bring the tone down, but it's been like pretty rough. And you know, sat in Warsaw in a nice warm hotel.
It makes totally sense, and sorry for interrupting. It makes totally sense to give us actually this kind of picture, because sometimes we have like some jobs like in an ideal like situation. So I want you to portray what it is actually.
Yeah.
Real.
This is one of the most important stories I've ever told as well. Honestly, like, listen, I love the, you know, glamorous studios overlooking the White House or the big summits with the leaders and stuff, and that's fun and interesting. But really, I've really had a reflection actually in the last like day or so since we got back from the story, that actually these kind of things are what bizarrely the stories that I need to be on to make sure I'm doing my job and feeling sort of fulfilled. It's a weird thing to say, fulfilled, but you know, like to be on the real stories again, because for the last year, I think I've been a bit theoretical as a journalist, and actually what I am is a field reporter. And as I say, it's in me. It's like, it's a vocation. I feel a responsibility to see those people, and I really love it. I'm really extremely lucky that we get to tell these stories. I always tell people that they shouldn't become journalists, and most people do. I'm always like, are you absolutely certain you want to get into this? Another thing is I'm taking a ton of online trolling right now for this report I've just filed, from Poles who are accusing me of pressing a humanitarian agenda. Never heard the humanitarian agenda. Wait, we don't want people to die? Is this the agenda? Like, yeah, I'm pressing the no, try and stop people from dying agenda. Yeah, whatever that is. So there's so many aspects to that complication. But yeah, I mean, if you're somebody that wants to tell stories, I would say journalism's not that hard to get into. Find a good story and tell people about it. It's a very simple process. It can be very difficult, but if people want to get into it, you can.
Jack, practical tips for someone who joins now in journalism. What are the things that he should expect, apart from like the psychological toll or the running around and so on? What are the things that should someone expect in terms of like practically what you're doing? You're reporting, you're photo shooting, like tips.
Yeah, so I shoot and edit all my own stuff as well. Not all of it, but like I can film an entire report on an iPhone that will go out on TV quality. So if you want to, so this is actually one thing I say is like create your toolbox as a journalist. This is what, when I do trainings with young journalists, this is what I say. Like, firstly, the first thing that any journalist needs to do is to learn how to write. it's whatever you do, whether you're a print journalist, an online, a radio, a TV, or whatever, you have to write, whether it's for your voice, whether it's for the paper, whatever. And this is, it's not some, like, you don't need to be, you know, Shakespearean beauty with the language. You need to learn the practicalities, the machinery of the language that you're writing in. I don't write in any other languages apart from English, to be honest, but if you just need to know the functionality of how to quickly filter your story into the language of journalism. And it's not so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a reason it works that way, because it means that your reporting is true and fair and present and whatever. You just, like, you can search up YouTube videos and articles about this, learn to write. Then, depending on what you want to do, I advise people to, as I say, to learn their skill box. So even if just learning to, like, shoot interviews on your phone, or some people just learn to edit their stuff so that they have a handle on, like, TV editing, or just a little bit of radio editing, audio editing, and stuff like that. Like, just try and build those different things. Another thing that this is a really, really, sorry, I know I'm talking a bit long, but an important thing I always think for journalists, and when I've trained, like, interns and stuff, one of the things that I found really, really interesting is one of the things I always say in their interviews is, like, what newspapers do you read in the morning? I'm like, just go on Facebook and stuff like that. And it's like, in order to be a journalist, you have to consume reporting. You have to ingest other people's stuff. You have to be reading whatever it is, like, literally whatever publication, even if, like, I might hate that publication, if that's the one that you like, you need to be involved in the story of reading what's going on. Like I say, you're the filter for and that's part of the ingest of how that sort of catalyst system works, I think. So just read and watch and talk and be involved.
You mentioned the do's so far, and I would like to stay with you just for one or more minute with you, Jack. What are the 3 don'ts that you would advise? 3 things that you would like to see in someone who's joining in this field right now. So 3 things that he shouldn't or she shouldn't do.
So the thing I hate more than anything in the world, and I obviously get accusations of this myself, but I know in my heart of hearts it's not, is don't make, the story is not about you. That's the #1 don't. I absolutely hate it when I see reporters, especially TV reporters, stood there like, I was here doing this and I was there, and it's like, ugh, no, like, so always remember that the story is not about you. The story is about whatever you're telling. Other don'ts is like, I don't know. I mean, just hold your ethics as well. So, like, don't breach your own ethics. That's something that's pretty important. Like, try and stay true to your own ethical code, whatever that is. Even if you're young, like, I mean, I've had some big fights. I've worked for some outlets that are not well, have particular editorial lines, and I've had to just say firm no, I will not do that. I will not term that thing in that phrase or whatever. And sometimes it's lost me work, to be honest with you, but I can go to bed at night and sleep. And then another don't, I don't know, but I think the main one is to not put yourself in the story. Whatever you do, if you try your best and you've done your research and you've made the story about what the story is, then you can look yourself in the mirror.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jack. Back to you, Ece. Your turn to share with our audience what are the 3 do's and 3 don'ts for someone who is ready to join the civil society sector.
Okay. Well, but can I first add something that came to my mind about what civil society is?
Absolutely.
Because recently we were talking about this at my office. This weekend, 48 organizations will come together as the closing meeting of this civil society support program. And we were trying to think of some icebreakers or some interactive questions to engage these 48, or actually like 100 people who will come from these organizations. And one question was, what does your mom think you do? Because civil society is such a diverse area where a lot of different people work. Like you can be a lawyer, you can be a social worker, you can be a sociologist, you can be someone like me who comes from journalism and publishing and work in there. Like you can do anything basically. And it's very difficult to define civil society, I think, compared to being a reporter, for example. But since I am a communications and campaigns officer, what I do is, like you said, Andreas, before in the first part, social media managing, drafting reports, writing statements, editing everything, every kind of publication that the organization is producing. So in my case too, like Jack said, learn how to write, and the medium doesn't matter, the format doesn't matter, but just know how to best put across your message. But another do is, I think, be open to change and be always retain the capacity to quickly adapt to new situations. And also, I think especially civil society is an area where you need to always keep yourself updated, but also make sure that you are ready to expand your own mind or expand your own horizon when you meet with other people, or because people will come and tell you, like, what you're saying is wrong, your advocacy is wrong, like, or what you're saying is hurting this fragment of society. And you should never be, I think, as a civil society worker, defensive towards such criticism.
May I very brief comment, because you said something quite important and I forgot to ask about this. When it comes to adaptation, is this also something that applies to journalism, Jack? And I mean, for example, if someone is covering, let's say, US elections or EU-US relations, I mean, do you have phenomena where in your line of business where journalists only focus in specific areas and they don't put their fingers in other stories? Do we have these kind of things? Is it wrong, right? I don't know.
There's loads of people that do just specific sort of business journalism, or EU affairs journalism or whatever. I think that unless that often those kind of people come from those industries and then turn into reporters. So like somebody works in a particular sector and then decides that they'll report on it. I think most people that sort of start as that intend to just get into the world of journalism tend to sort of work their way through into different areas. Like I've got something of a specialist in like a specialization in international criminal investigations. I've done a lot of work in The Hague at the ICC, but that was not intentional. I just went there once. I was like, oh, this is fascinating, and then just kind of kept going back and got into the sector and taught loads of people. But it doesn't, I think people choose to specialize if it's something that they're passionate about, and that's important. I don't have really like a particular specialization. And like I say, I think a lot of people, if they do that, so like legal experts can become like legal journalists more, I think. I think you kind of have to as well, in a sense, if you're going to be that highly sort of pinpoint specialized reporter, you have to know about it before you join.
Excellent. Okay, thanks a lot, Jack. Chet, back to you. Sorry for the brief interruption.
That's okay. So do's and don'ts. It's very difficult for me to come up with don'ts, but similar to what Jack said about journalism, hold your ethics, definitely, and also try to stay true to try to stay true to what you're doing, and also try to do it with a lot of this sense of responsibility, because there's also a lot of sloppy civil society work, thinking that this is, I think, similar everywhere around the world. Someone must do this now, like the sense that someone must do this and we are doing this now means that we can do it half-assedly and no one will care, because at least we're putting something out there. But I think that we should hold a better standard than that. But besides that, what can I say about do's and don'ts? And in case of Turkey, I think one do is also try to protect yourself. Be very careful with digital security. And I don't know.
Maybe also protect your partners. Don't put at risk your partners, your
Exactly, yeah.
beneficiaries. It's also one of the things. Be responsible, not only in terms of like being, true to your ethics and do your job, but also protect your beneficiaries and your partners. Don't put them at risk.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all that comes to mind.
Okay, the most important points were raised, and I think with that we can conclude today's podcast. I can't thank you enough, both of you, for joining me so early from Turkey and from Poland. Best of luck to both of you in your work today. Have a lovely weekend ahead. Next podcast will be dedicated on CV writing and interview skills about personal brand building with Julie van der Meulen and Sven Gerst. So stay tuned. I'm Andreas Marazis, and that was the ENC Depth Podcast.